This question definitely involves memorizing some punctuation rules, but it's using one that I don't really see on the SAT very often. Obviously, it can come up. It's actually one you probably know from your own writing and experience with grammar, but it just doesn't come up on the SAT very often, and it has to do with quotations. So the fact that there's a quotation here means that there needs to be a comma before that quotation. So that gets rid of B and D. I think the reason it doesn't come up is just that the passages on the writing section aren't usually kind of like quoting people. It's much more of like an information passage, and so it's just weird to kind of fit in a quotation. The only reason you might see a quotation is if we're quoting like a certain word, but if we're doing that because we're like trying to give emphasis to the word, like the way that you kind of use air quotes sometimes when you talk, to put emphasis on something, then we wouldn't use a comma. That's just kind of like a regular old word. So it only works when we're quoting something kind of lengthy, and that's what's going on here. And the way that they introduce the quote to us is kind of fitting with our normal expectations of what commas are for, right? They mark an end in or change in sentence structure. And so that word declared is kind of like, in a way, ending the thought. And the quotation is this additional extra piece of information that kind of like explains and adds a little bit more. And so that's why we use a comma most of the time that we have a quotation, especially a long quotation, because we're kind of tacking this thing onto the sentence. We could just say, a front page headline in the New York Times declared. It'd be weird to say that, but that's grammatically correct as a sentence. And so we would kind of want to know what they declared, but once they've declared something, they've kind of completed their grammatical duties and the sentence is complete. So this comma is showing the addition of the quote as kind of an extra clause. But we also have to make a decision about this comma right here. And here's another case where there's a rule that tends to come up on the SAT that you should know, and that is that prepositional phrases, which is what we have right here in the New York Times, do not get commas, usually. There might be exceptions. I can't think of any right now, but there might be an exception. So in this case, A is the best answer because the main idea kind of gets stuck together. A front page headline in the New York Times declared. That's the main thrust of the sentence. That's the core. And so we don't need any commas to interrupt that because we're just kind of a continuous thought from beginning to end. We do have a comma at the beginning to add on this little extra piece the next day. And then, like I said, we have our comma to add on our quote because it's kind of also its extra piece. That's what commas do. As long as we try to keep track of that, we're going to be in good shape. But I think both of the commas that we end up putting here, you can actually get even more specific about why we need them. It's structural, but it's, in the one case, a prepositional phrase is kind of the part of the main sentence in a way, and a quote is an extra piece, and so that's why it gets it. Really good things to know, but I would say the bigger one that'll come up again is the prepositional phrase thing. That comes up more often, but the quote thing, you should just know for the future.